Good morning, everybody. Derek here to bring you another video for The Walking Dead, Season 7. And this video is going to be a follow-up to my review and focus solely on the death or the deaths that happened in last night's episode. I want to talk about why Negan decided to kill who he killed, why the writers probably wrote that story the way that they did, and kind of talk a little bit about the character or characters that died and how that is going to impact the season, the audience, and pretty much the whole story going forward. If you are not caught up with The Walking Dead, if you do not want to know anything about last night, if you don't want to know who Negan killed, any of that, exit the video now or you will be spoiled. Okay, so obviously if you watched the episode last night, you will know that Abraham was selected by Negan through Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. And after he was killed, Glenn was then killed because of something that Daryl did. And I think that from Negan's perspective, trying to really understand the character and trying to figure out why he did what he did, I think that it really came down to a couple of different decisions. For Abraham especially, that one was obviously the one that was planned. I mean, Negan, when he meets a new group, he always kills somebody in order to show how serious he is, to show his dominance, to show that he will do what it takes to get you to listen to him. And obviously, I think that he chose Abraham for a couple of reasons. Number one is, again, if you look at all of those scenes, at no point does Abraham ever show fear, sadness in his face, or in his body posture. He is literally sitting up straight, giving Negan an angry stare. I mean, I think in many ways Abraham was baiting Negan, basically trying to say, hey, buddy, come on, do me. I dare you. Come on. I want you to do me. Not that I think that Abraham had a death wish necessarily or that he wanted to die, because obviously things were definitely looking better in his life. But it just goes to Abraham's character. He is a soldier. He is somebody who knows how to stick to a mission and follow it through. And that's always been his character. And I think that in that moment, he knew there was no way out. He knew there was no way they were going to get out of this, no way they were going to escape. And I think that he felt he loved his family so much, he was willing to be the person that would take the hit for the team, as Negan called it. And I think in many ways Negan saw that as well. And I think that maybe what Negan was trying to do was eliminate a threat, because I think that Abraham wouldn't have been willing to follow Negan. I don't think there's anything that would have made Abraham become a follower of Negan. I think that Abraham would have been a constant person that would have been telling Rick, no, we're not doing this. We got to find a way to fight. We got to do this. I just can't see Abraham ever bowing before Negan and following his demands. So I can obviously understand what was going on there. So I think that Negan caught on to that, and that's exactly why he killed Abraham first. Now, of course, Glenn's death was not planned, I think, in Negan's mind. But I think that Negan always goes into these situations prepared to do whatever he has to do. And with Rick's group, he wanted to set a very tough example, because Rick's group had killed probably almost 50 of his people over the course of season 6. I don't think that Negan has ever had a threat so big go against him. And I think that really he was thinking, you know what, I'm going to try to be easy, but if they don't want to listen, I'm prepared to be hard. And of course, we saw that many times throughout the season 6 finale and a couple times in the season 7 premiere, you got a little bit of, attitude from Rick's group. And obviously I can understand that, but from Negan's perspective, he didn't want that. As you know, Glenn, of course, jumped up in the season 6 finale and yelled at Negan when he was threatening Maggie. And of course, Negan said those words, okay, that stuff's not cool. Don't do that again. The first one's free. I understand this is a very terrible situation. I understand that. But if anybody else, freaks out, tries to interfere, does anything I don't like, I will shut that stuff down. No exceptions. And of course, what ended up happening was After Abraham was killed, basically Negan went over to Rosita and was taunting her with the bat, basically realizing that Abraham and Rosita had been in a physical, loving relationship before, and Daryl just could not take Negan taunting her, and he gets up and he punches Negan right in the face. And obviously, I think it would have been very easy for Negan to just be like, okay, Daryl, you're the one that broke the rule. I may as well do you. You should be number 2. But I think there were a couple of things going through Negan's mind that made him choose Glenn over Daryl. One is that I think that Daryl obviously interested him. He interested the rest of the group of the Saviors, so I think that was part of a factor. I think another thing was you saw in the episode how Rick was, in a sense, beaten down, and how Negan threatened that if he wouldn't chop off Carl's arm, then he would take him back to the sanctuary and make him live for years, reliving those moments. I think that Negan knows when certain individuals do feel, pain, fear, sadness, how he can make them feel that way. And I think that he would rather Daryl live with it and weaken him. And Glenn was also the one that freaked out first, and I think that that was a big factor as to why Negan then went back to him, because he said, first one's free, but after that, I will shut that stuff down, no exceptions. And I think that he just went back to the original person who started it, because he said, the first one's free. So Glenn, in a sense, got a free pass. But then if anybody else was going to do anything, he was going to shut down what originally started it, I think, to send the message. And I think that's why he chose Glenn as his second person. So that's Negan's perspective. I think that's why Negan did what he did. But from the writer's perspective, obviously they could have chosen any character. They could have spun it in a way that would have changed it to any of the other characters, and probably it would have had just as much of a significant impact, if not more, depending on who they would have chosen. So why did they go with Abraham and Glenn? Why did they choose 2 deaths? Well, I think that to start off, 2 deaths was probably the route that they went, because when you think about all the things that were happening, I think that they really wanted to break the group down. That was pretty much the goal. They wanted to hurt as many people as they possibly could from Rick's group. And I think that the other thing is, because of the long time period, they wanted to really set a very extreme episode to come back to kind of make up for all of that wait time. So I think those were some of the factors that went into it. But I also think that a lot of it had to do with making the episode unpredictable, as well as kind of going along with the comic books in a way that would not make you think it's so predictable, but still kind of sticking true to a lot of the main things that happened in that comic book issue. Because if you look at issue 100, it is Glenn that is picked by Negan to be killed. It is him that is chosen, not Abraham. And if you look at Abraham's death in the comics, he was shot through the eye with the arrow from Dwight's crossbow. And I think that, you saw in interviews that Robert Kirkman really regretted killing Abraham in that fashion. He only did it because there was nothing else going on in the issue. He didn't want it to be totally boring. And Robert Kirkman obviously felt that the character deserved better. And I think that it was a lot of those factors of, Abraham at this point, is dead in the comics. And pretty much it kind of goes along with the territory that when your character is dead in the comics, you are living on borrowed time, as they said last night on Talking Dead. And really the only 2 characters left that are dead in the comics but alive in the TV show at this point are Carol and Judith. And of course, they changed Carol's character so drastically that it's not even the same from the comics. And Judith, really, it could have gone either way. But I think that they were really thinking about that route. And I think that when you look at Abraham and Glenn, they were the next that could have died. And I think that they wanted to make it unpredictable, but also make it twice as worse because of everything that had happened. And I mean, I didn't see Glenn's death coming. That's the thing. And I think that many of us also didn't see that. That we kind of just thought it was going to be one, that was it, and it's over. And, oh, it was Abraham. Okay, they went a different route, so Glenn's going to be okay. And then all of a sudden, just turning around and Negan, taking that hit at Glenn so unexpectedly, I think just really made that scene so much worse for us to feel. It kind of brought back all of those feelings that we had about Glenn. And, I think that it was even more hurtful for us that they did it that route because we didn't see it coming at that point. So I think they satisfied that. And I think they changed it up enough that we kind of were feeling okay. And then all of a sudden this bombshell was just delivered to us. So I think that that's why the writers went with 2 deaths. And I think that, again, they chose Abraham and Glenn because they were going to be the next up to die in the comic books. And I also think that they were looking at the impact that these characters left on their fellow characters and the audience. You look at Abraham and you really do see a guy that is tough. He's meant to survive in this world. I've enjoyed Abraham's story so much more in the television show. I think they did it more justice. And I think that his catchphrases, his sayings that he does, I mean, they got those rare laughs in the episodes of the television show, a show that is so, violent, so scary. I think that, they had those light moments, and I think they wanted to get rid of that for this upcoming season. I think that this is going into a darker territory, a darker story, and we won't have Abraham's sarcastic sayings to really lighten up the moment. And at this point, I think, sadly, we've also had a character take over that. Negan is a character that, like Abraham, he uses all these similes and hyperboles and exaggerations that kind of take the place of that. But unfortunately, they're darker. The things that Negan says, yeah, they might appear somewhat funny, but you're not laughing. You're really just like, oh, this is terrible to say. So I think that was part of it. And I think that they really did Abraham justice more than they did so in the comics. And I think this was something that he was always meant for. I think that Abraham was always somebody that I think wanted to go down swinging, sacrificing himself for the group if he had to. But it also shut down hope. And I think that Abraham and Glenn were 2 characters that definitely embodied hope, because you saw Abraham go from losing his family to having a mission to then, finding a family, growing, close to them, dropping a lot of the feelings that he had about the apocalypse and wanting to start new. He saw Alexandria as that opportunity, and he wanted to be with Sasha. He wanted to start a family, and the show cut that down. And I think that it was for that specific reason. I think that they wanted to make us realize, the apocalypse is not always going to be that kind of a story. It's going to shut things like that down. It's going to end lives prematurely. It's going to hurt people. That's just what it does. And more so even for Glenn. We've followed Glenn's story ever since the beginning of the show. And I mean, it is so hard to lose that character. Part of me was praying they would go a different route, that they wouldn't choose Glenn. And I kind of knew it was going to happen based on just some things that I was thinking about and seeing. But there was still that chance that you hoped they wouldn't go that route. Because if there's anybody that looks at hope, humanity, the moral compass, if you see a character like that now on the show, it's Glenn. That's who it was. He was the story of the guy who, maybe we would want to be like going into the apocalypse, that we would want to still have hope for humanity, that things can be better. We would want to still be able to think that we could find love, that we could settle down, that we could have those connections, even with everything else going terrible around him. And I think that no matter what Glenn was going through, he always stuck with that. Even in the moment where he had to kill those 2 saviors, I still think that he had a good outlook for the world. And I think that he still hoped that great things could be done for it. And I really hope that a lot of that resonates with the rest of the characters. And I think it will, and I think that it's just sad to see that hope really torn from us from the show for both of those characters, and especially Glenn, because You thought, yeah, maybe there's a chance that him and Maggie will stay together. They fought through so much, went through so much, separated twice, almost killed, almost never reunited, both times reunited under extreme circumstances, and unfortunately, Glenn's luck finally ran out. And I think that's just even harder to accept when you look at all of the times that Glenn almost died. I listed them in one of my videos, and I mean, it was over a dozen. The man has had lots of brushes with death. And I think that another theme for him was luck eventually runs out. You eventually come to a point where you can't get out. And I think that embodies life in general. We will all sadly come to a point in life where we will no longer be here. We will have passed on. And I think that under Glenn's circumstances, that's kind of, what happened. It was basically the end of the line. So I think that it's going to have impacts on the characters for probably the rest of the show. I don't think that this is going to be an episode that is ever forgotten by the fans and that is ever forgotten by the actors and actresses that participated in it. And I think that, you're going to see Maggie as a completely different character from here on out. You're going to see Sasha as a different character. Every character will be different. And I think that their relationships are definitely going to be tested in this season. Rick especially is going to be facing so many challenges to try to figure out where he is going to take this group. And I think that it really is going to have an impact on this entire season. So rest in peace, Abraham. Rest in peace, Glenn. And to Michael Cudlitz and Stephen Yun, thank you very much for your wonderful performances on the show. You will be greatly missed, and it's very sad to see you both go. I really, really like these characters, and it was very hard to see what happened in last night's episode. But we'll see what happens. I think that their memory will never be forgotten. I think that it's a memory that will live throughout the show, and I can't wait to see what they do with Season 7 with that story. So with that, I'm going to bring this video to a close. I want to thank all of you for watching. Let me know what you guys think. Why do you think the writers went with the decisions that they did? Vent your frustrations. Vent your emotions. Tell me what you're feeling about Abraham and Glenn's death. Don't be afraid to let me know. Feel free to subscribe. I do have more videos coming. And if you have any suggestions for future videos that you would like to see, don't be afraid to suggest them. Have a very wonderful day, and thank you all very much for watching.